Here we go. I am here to settle an age-old argument in the modern world of fitness. Batman versus Superman. Israel versus Palestine. England versus Germany. Harry Potter versus Voldemort. Nothing compares to the battle between Hyrox versus CrossFit. Now, the simple question, which is greater? Which is harder? And finally, which one is the god of functional sports? Now, I'm talking from a place of having done both. Yes, I'm a bit of a Hyrox newbie. I've only done the one competition, but I've done a lot of training in terms of Hyrox in the build up to that first event. And CrossFit, I am now still a toddler in the grand scheme of things, but with 2 years under my belt. And, I think near enough 7, 8, maybe even 9 competitions ticked off the box. I think I'm in a place now where I can give my honest review and opinion on both. So let's kick it off, starting with this skill element, because what I want us to sort of talk about today is really what is the most challenging. And on a serious note, if you're pushing yourself and challenging yourself within one of these two worlds, I want to give you the information that will help you make a decision to do that. Now, if you're someone who's a complete newbie to either one of the worlds, then there's probably going to be one which is more relatable to you. However, if you're already in that CrossFit space, already in that functional fitness space, then this is really going to open the doors and open your eyes to seeing what's possible and what might be the best option for you. But if we run through the comparisons of skill, and I don't mean to be stumping anything down from this is just how I see it. If you don't agree, you can either leave a lovely comment, because I know I'm going to get some abuse for this, or you can piss off back to your cult. I really don't give a shit. This is just what I think, and this is to help the person who doesn't know maybe the differences between the two to make a decision on what they want to focus on. Alrighty, so Hyrox, when it comes to skill, I believe in comparison to CrossFit, it's quite fairly low skill. There's 8 movements to learn, and they're all fairly easy in the sense of there's not much of a complex movement pattern to learn. For example, a wall ball is just a squat with a ball throw. A kettlebell farmer's carry is just literally carrying 2 heavier weights by your side. A lunge is just stepping forward, 1 foot in front of the other, and lunging forward. A sled push is a push, a pull is a pull. You get my drift. There's not really much skill element behind it. Whereas CrossFit, very, very high skill. You've got things, a lot of gymnastics, handstand walks, handstand push-ups, butterfly pull-ups, bar muscle-ups, ring muscle-ups. You then got the Olympic lifting and the skill behind that. Think about it this way. Olympic lifters practice that movement, that specific movement, for their whole lives, and they don't even become a complete perfectionist at it. It's impossible. There's so much skill and so much variety in CrossFit. You cannot master CrossFit. It is literally impossible to master CrossFit. However, you can definitely master Hyrox. 8 movements to learn, with about 60 to 70% of the race itself being running. Who's to say if you don't focus on Hyrox for several years, you can become a complete master. Hyrox is also predictable. It's a standardized race. Nothing changes. The order doesn't change. The distance doesn't change. The only time the weights will change is if you go from one category to another. CrossFit, you have no fucking idea. Some competitions might be friendly, and they might release the workouts on the week. Oh, how kind of you. But I'm actually someone who prefers not to see the pain that I'm going to be enduring. But with that in mind, you can't prepare for a CrossFit event that is next month, let alone next year. And quite often you'll see at the CrossFit Games, they will throw new movements in there, which is, for the elite, the best of the best. Typically, at a local competition, you won't see any new movements unless previously stated. And I will say, Hyrox, for anyone who is not currently in the world of functional fitness, wants to make that switch from the traditional bro split, maybe just start a fitness journey of their own, Hyrox is probably the one to lean on, especially if you are, let's say, 30 and above, because you can learn how to do a Hyrox in 6 months and be pretty good at it. CrossFit, however, it's going to take years, and I mean years, to master. not even master, but to get to a high level at. I was fortunate that I had a background in fitness, but it still took me, and probably still to this day, I won't be able to RX every single competition, every single WOD. There's still skills that I need to learn, and I'm someone who's been going for over 2 years, pretty much every damn day. So there's to give you a little bit of a insight into the world of CrossFit. It's hard. It's damn hard. So with that in mind, I'm going to give my vote in terms of skill to CrossFit. It is the most challenging. It is the most, there is more variety to learn, and it will give you more skills on the base of it. So we're moving on now to the strength element. Now, strength for me is an important factor in the world of fitness. It's probably the most important factor, I think, when it comes to fitness and health markers. Essentially, the stronger you are, typically the healthier you are, as long as you are managing other components of fitness. Now, don't get me wrong, if you have to maybe put on some extra pounds to get stronger and stronger and stronger, hence why the world's strongest men are in excess of 300 pounds, 400 pounds, and built like absolute bulldozers. Now, that wouldn't suffice for someone wanting to run a Hyrox race, because quite simply, you'll be too heavy, you'll be too fat, you will not be able to move. And that reminds me of a guy who was watching the Hyrox. His arms were bigger than my thighs, and let me tell you, my thighs are not small. That guy was an absolute animal, but I couldn't imagine him running around that track for 8 kilometers, because he simply will not have the fitness. He will not be light enough. He will not have the conditioning to do that. So when it comes to strength, Hyrox, there's no barbell or free weights. All those Hyroxers maybe never seen a barbell in their life. Maybe they just have a phobia. But the competition itself does not require it, so they are okay and they feel comfortable. But jokes aside, there are only, in my opinion, 2 heavy movements in the whole of the Hyrox race. That would be the sled push and the sled pull. You might argue that the farmer's carry is a heavy movement. In my opinion, it's not that heavy. It wouldn't be something that I would class as heavy. However, let's say there's 2 to 3 heavy movements. The lunges and the wall balls, not really that heavy. So it does require some strength. You have to have some amount of strength to be able to push and pull that sled for sure, especially if you're competing in the pro division. I have seen people who haven't maybe trained strength and they're just focused on the endurance capacity, get to those movements and struggle very much, if not even not able to move the sled at all. But you do have to equate for, like I just said, too much strength will affect your running negatively, because if you go too overboard, you increase in size, you increase in weight. Now, CrossFit requires, in my opinion, a lot of strength, and not just static strength, not just standard strength, but a lot of strength differentiators. Isometric, calisthenics, it requires dynamic strength, static strength. You're doing barbell work, Olympic lifts, powerlifting, gymnastics, body manipulation, a lot of different requirements for strength there, especially if you are at the RX/elite level in those divisions, you require high strength. There will be a premise that you must lift over a certain amount to be considered for that category. It might be 80 kilos, it might even be 100 kilos. In the local competitions, it's more down towards 60, 70 kilos. However, you do not have to be a pro in those strength movements, because, like I said, CrossFit has so much variety. If you are a king at gymnastics, if you are someone who is super, super fit and has a elite level of endurance, you can maybe take the strength WODs, the power WODs, with a little less intensity, bank the energy, and you can push yourself in the events you're going to be strong at. That's where CrossFit and Hyrox differentiates. All right, you've got more than one opportunity in CrossFit. But again, I have to give the strength element to CrossFit, because quite simply, there is not enough strength movements in Hyrox for strength to be considered as the most important component. So the next one, as I sip my delightful coffee, intensity. All right, so maybe I have a bit of recency bias to this, but I'm going to talk about the Hyrox first, because I do have that recency bias there. Yes, it's... Oh, this is the wrong slide. Preparation. Let's move back. I'm jumping ahead of myself. Intensity. There we go. So, intensity. Hyrox. It's going to be at the very least 1 hour. I mean, if you're hitting 1 hour, you are at a elite level. You are at a very good level. You're typically looking at solo being around 1 hour and a half for average. For a duo, 1 hour 15-ish, depending on the category you're going for. But as an overall average, it's pretty much non-stop for over an hour. You can pretty much guarantee that. And especially for solo, there's absolutely no respite. Yes, okay, you can take rest, but you have to keep them short. You have to keep them sharp. Otherwise, your time is going to suffer. However, doubles requires a slightly different intensity. I compare it to fartlek training, which is kind of a sprint, recover sort of thing. Because you're switching between partners on the stations, you're able to go a little bit more intense on those because you get a little bit of respite. However, the runs are still done together, so you can't redline it. Otherwise, your heart rate won't come down, your lactic acid will build up, and the running will be absolutely tortured. I'm going to get to the pain cave in another slide shortly and discuss that. You have one chance, one race, there's no redos. You know, you book a race, it might be 6 weeks away, it might be a week away, it might be 6 months away, but that is your event. There's one event on the day. You can't take a break in between it. It's when you start, you have to then stop. So there's not more than one opportunity. And, you know, if you get injured, if you get sick, if you have a little niggle throughout that race, suck it up, bitch, because you've just got to get through it and you've got to basically finish with the injuries, or you don't. Simple as that. CrossFit, however, it varies per event. One event might be a max lift, an all-out lift, power, one movement, 10 seconds max. Another event might be a 20-minute AMRAP, which is obviously more endurable, maybe more strategic, but you're moving for a longer amount of time. However, what I can guarantee is you're not going to get one workout longer than 1 hour in a CrossFit competition, especially at the local comps. You're going to be performing 3 to 5 WODs per competition, up to 1 hour rest between as well. So there is plenty of time to recover, to refuel, even to manage your injuries. This leaves you several opportunities, can't speak today, to perform. As I said, you might not be the strongest competitor, so that 1 rep max might be a little bit out of your wheelhouse. However, if the next event is a lot of endurance work on the ergs, grunt work as I like to call it, and you've got that engine, then you can excel very much in those type of workouts. It's definitely more tactical and strategic, pointing to the point I've just mentioned. You also have to manage your energy levels to a certain degree, and it gives you the opportunity to do that because you have the rest in between the watts. The events are usually short and sharp, as I say, under 15-20 minutes. And there is a lot of variety in terms of the fitness components used. Strength, skill, power, endurance. But of course, there's a lot of mindset and mental toughness used throughout both of these sports. Now, I'm actually going to maybe say something controversial that you probably wouldn't expect me to say. But I think at the top level of Hyrox, if you are a serious competitor, if you are someone who is going to push themselves to get the best result, I believe the intensity of a Hyrox is more than the intensity of CrossFit. It might be that I am biased towards that because I am someone who is good at doing something very intense and then recovering well, and less so at something that is continuous. Therefore, I find the Hyrox more difficult. Another person might be the opposite, but I can confidently say, after all the CrossFit competitions I've done, compared to the Hyrox, I have never been more sore than as I was after Hyrox. I was walking like, maybe you'd say a typical Hyrox athlete. I was walking like I've been bummed. But, in all seriousness, my hips were shot, my knees were shot, my back was aching, and the sleep that night was terrible because I was just in so much pain. So yeah, intensity score goes to Hyrox. Boom. Now the prep work comes in. What is harder to prepare for? Now again, there may be some bias in terms of the Hyrox. It was my first one, so a lot of the prep was unknown. I had to sort of work out a lot from that first event. How did I feel? Where did I lose energy? Where could I have prepared better? Etc. etc. What I will say is the Hyrox, like I say, it's more focused. It's more predictable. You can prepare in terms of your weaknesses, the movements. You can be more strategic in the lead up to your Hyrox. You know, from months out, you can zone in and focus specifically on the movements and the training that you need to do. However, when it comes to CrossFit, there simply is no getting around, that you might get the workouts a week or two before the competition. But if you want to cover all the bases, you have to be practicing everything in CrossFit. Gymnastics, Olympic lifting, erg work, longer workouts, shorter workouts, strength work. There's a lot more to cover when it comes to the CrossFit. Hyrox though, much lengthier sessions. As I say, and you might have seen from my video on the Hyrox experience itself, there's absolutely no cutting corners. You simply will not get fitter and will not condition your body to deal with that much intensity for that amount of time without doing it previously. So you have to be doing sessions at least 45 minutes, 1 hour, 1 hour and a half. You have to get the miles in your legs on the running. CrossFit is a lot more, or not as specific. Not that I'm saying you can cut corners, but you can certainly work on other areas more than others because simply they may not come up in that competition that you've signed up for. You may be lucky and get all your strengths coming up in that competition coming up for. Vice versa, you may be unlucky if you're not going to focus or not going to cover all the bases and all your weaknesses come up in that CrossFit competition. So you're playing a bit of a game of roulette when it comes to CrossFit. Hyrox, you can be super zoned in and focused. Finally, the day of is very important when I think it comes to Hyrox. You've got 1 hour, 1 hour and a half to fuel for. That means your training that week has to be tapered. It has to be measured. You have to make sure that you're getting enough rest in that week. Your diet in the lead up and on the day also has to basically give you the energy and the fuel to finish that race. Not only finish it, but feel good, feel strong, feel fast throughout that race. And if you don't prepare well, and I'll hold my hands up because this little idiot decided it was a good idea to have a few beers the night before his Hyrox race, and that is a lesson I have learned. But hey, I had fun. Anyway, it can affect your energy system so much. You may train super hard for 6 months, feel as fit as you ever have done, but if you don't fuel the day before on the day properly, that might become absolutely useless because within half an hour, by the fifth lap of the track, whatever you're up to, your energy systems may just go and you might hit that wall, and that wall hits you like a motherfucker in the face. I can promise you that. Whereas CrossFit, it can be more flexible. You can play around with your training. You can be intense and then maybe taper a couple of days out. I myself like to just continue the week as normal, be in the mode of training, and then when it comes to the comp, it doesn't feel that much different. Others like to take a bit of a rest. And on the day, of course, you've got time through and in between the workouts to refuel. You don't have to think about it as strategically as you do with Hyrox because you've got the opportunity throughout the whole day. Now, this is a difficult one. I actually think this is a draw. There's key points for each in terms of the preparation. I think as I say, it's easier to prepare for Hyrox because of the predictability. However, with CrossFit, because it's not as specific and because you're getting that sort of rest in on the day itself, you've got more opportunities to recover, to prepare, and to fuel. Then we go into the final one. The pain cave. I said I was going to come to this one. What is the pain cave? Now, to quote my good friend Jan, who, just to give him a shout out, also did the Poznan Hyrox on Saturday. He did the solo in the morning. It was great to see Jan get in the pain cave multiple times, but come out the other side with a PB. The pain cave is simply when your mind goes to that dark place. Your body is shutting down. Everything feels dark. You've got the voice inside your head telling you to stop, telling you you're a pussy, telling you or asking you, why the fuck are you doing this? And the pain cave will swallow you, eat you, and spit you out if you do not encounter it and face up to it with those fucking hard horns on top of your head. What I mean by that is you have to be able to acknowledge the pain cave, but be prepared to go right through it. Now, the pain cave in the Hyrox can be fucking horrible. If you're there near the start, if you enter the pain cave within the first quarter of the race, you've got so long to get through. So many runs to do, so many movements to do. It can feel like an eternity, and that can be enough to completely derail you. Even if you don't quit the race, I can guarantee by going out too hot and getting in that pain cave too early, your time is going to suffer and you're not going to achieve your target. It requires a very strong mindset, a very strong commitment to get through it and get out of the pain cave, because you can get out during the race itself. It's all about managing that heart rate and your energy systems. Now, if you pick up a niggle, an injury, I picked up very, very sore hips. My partner Adam had a very horrendous stitch towards the end. You simply don't have the opportunity to get rid. You have to get through it. You have to push through and hope that it subsides or hope that it numbs in some capacity. And because Hyrox is such a big event nowadays, you do feel some slight pressure from the crowd. Also from your partner if you're doing a doubles, but particularly from the crowd. Like, you might not even have someone watching you, but there will always be someone watching you. And trust me, I quite enjoyed it, but at the same time, it did put that pressure on me to not let loose, to not let go, to not give up, which can be seen as a positive and a negative, I think. Now, when it comes to CrossFit, the pain cave is usually shorter and more manageable. As I said, a workout, it doesn't typically last more than 15 minutes. So if you can get your mindset to say, I've only got this amount left, you're more than likely going to come out of that pain cave and push through. You can taper back some of the WODs if you want, and still win. For example, if I'm seeing some big ass dude throwing, 150 kilos above his head, what's the point in pushing myself when I know I'm not really going to move anywhere up on the leaderboard? How about I just wait until the next WOD where there's gymnastics in there, where there's more endurance, more erg work, where I know I'm going to perform better. Be smart, be tactical. Now, the pain cave itself, imagine the pain cave like a knife. In the Hyrox, it's a Stanley knife. It's short, it's sharp, but it doesn't hurt that much. You can manage it. You could run with that Stanley knife in your body. In CrossFit, because it's shorter in terms of the event, it's more intense. That motherfucker is a zombie knife. A zombie knife, for those who don't know, is a horrible, horrible knife with multiple teeth on that I'm heard to believe it hurts like a fucking bitch if you get stabbed with that. And if you get into the pain cave too much, in terms of, in real terms, that lactic acid is too full in terms of your muscles, your heart rate is too high, you can often absolutely white out in that workout. You can collapse. You can maybe never finish the workout if you go too hard. And what's worse is you're going to have to do it all again in the next one. So in one competition, you might visit that pain cave 2, 3, maybe 4 times. And you have to be okay with that. You have to have the mindset to push you through. You have to not be a little bitch. So moving in to the last point on this workout. Not the workout, sorry. The last point on this presentation. Who wins? What's harder? What's more challenging? What should you be more proud of? And finally, what should you maybe put more focus into in the upcoming year when it comes to challenging yourself? Both are challenging. Hands down, both are super, super challenging. And at the same time, it's up to you how challenging you want to make them. Are you going for a new PB? Are you going to put yourself in the higher category? Are you going to aim to, leave everything on the floor? Or is it just about completing it for you? Because that really does determine how challenging it's going to be. Both require proper training. You couldn't just ask the average Joe off the streets to turn up to either competition and perform. I think they'd be more likely to get through a Hyrox, but They ain't going to do well, and that's even if they make it through. When it comes to a CrossFit competition, they're going to look like a lost puppy at Christmas time after a few days when you're sick of that puppy and you kick it to the streets. It's a sad truth, but it happens. But I'm getting off topic here. Both require proper training, nutrition, focus, prep. Simple. For me, Hyrox is more accessible. I could take this to any functional gym, any HIIT class, any group training, and I could sign up half the class to do a Hyrox, or at least a Hyrox class. I do the same with CrossFit. I will probably get 20% max because CrossFit has that skill element to it. Not everyone can do it. Not everyone can physically perform the skills, and therefore they get put off. CrossFit is longer to learn as well. There's more variety, less specific prep. So you will more often than not get more focused athletes in CrossFit. They are more, shall we say, loyal to CrossFit because, once you're in, you're in. Hyrox, you can be a little bit of a slut. You might do some Hyroxes, you might do some CrossFit comps, you might do some bodybuilding shows. Sounds like me. I must be a fitness slut. But what I'm trying to say is, Hyrox allows you to do that. CrossFit doesn't so much because there's so much to learn for it. CrossFit will expose more of your strengths and weaknesses. You can be first in one WOD and the worst in the next. It's simple as that. And for me, at an average level, this is important now. At an average level, an average athlete, and I'm talking about an average person, it's more challenging. The Hyrox is hands down more challenging because of the length, because of the intensity, because of the pure energy that has to be used to complete one. No matter whether you're a beginner or an experienced pro, you're always going to run the same race. You can't do half a Hyrox and complete a Hyrox. However, comparing that to CrossFit, you can do a scale competition. You can do a competition that is, 2 WODs deep. You can do a competition that is 5 WODs. You've got a bit more choice when it comes to CrossFit. Now, in comparison, at the RX Plus level in CrossFit, I believe is more challenging simply because the time you have to put in to the training, the skills that you have to learn, the strength that you have to gain. It's something very similar to it. What I would compare is jiu-jitsu, kickboxing, something where you have to get your belt. Now, the RX level is like a belt grading, You have to earn the right to be an RX athlete, and it's not going to happen overnight. So there's my 2 cents. I know I'm kind of sitting on the fence about who wins. Now, when it comes to preference, I have to say I love CrossFit, and that's my sport. Hyrox, though, you've definitely got a place in my heart, and it definitely will be something that I still do for a long time. I think the two, they overlap very well. You can very much be a CrossFitter and do Hyrox. I think it's a little bit more difficult to be a Hyroxer doing CrossFit, but there's still opportunity to do it. But I'm interested to see what you think. What do you think is the better sport? What's the more challenging? Which one would you be more prouder of competing in? So this is Coach Thomas signing out, and I hope I've unearthed some truths behind the Hyrox and CrossFit debate. Peace.